Hey guys, and welcome back to part 2 of my investigation into how Ryzen Mobile, specifically the Ryzen 5 2500U, performs in recent games. If you haven't seen the first part of this two-part series, check that out too, because it covers popular multiplayer and esports titles like PUBG, Fortnite, Overwatch and CSGO, which, it might be interest to you. In this video, however, we'll be diving headfirst into the graphics extravaganza that is recent AAA titles, including intensive entries like The Witcher 3 and Assassin's Creed Origins, to see if some or any of these games can scale down to a level that's actually playable on the integrated Vega 8 GPU here. I've specifically chosen to look at more recent titles here because it's not always obvious if these sort of games can be played on integrated graphics. In fact, I know for sure that every game I'm looking at today is not playable on Intel's 8th gen U series CPUs. So we'll really get to see the benefits of the Ryzen 5 2500U's increased GPU power. Older games are less interesting, not just because they tend to be less popular, but also because most of the time they're easier to run. Games like Skyrim, Bioshock Infinite, Tomb Raider, and so forth are all quite playable on ultra portables these days, so there's not much point going through what Ryzen Mobile brings for 5-year-old titles. So we're sticking to reasonably recent releases in this video. Like part 1, all testing was done on the HP Envy X360, a 15-inch slim and light laptop with the Ryzen 5 2500U inside and 16GB of RAM. Again, there is a faster Ryzen Mobile chip out there, the Ryzen 7 2700U, but I haven't had hands-on time with it just yet, so when I do, expect an updated version of this video with brand new data. Let's kick this thing off with Grand Theft Auto 5, which I did cover briefly in my original review of the Ryzen 5 2500U. As I said in that video, Ryzen Mobile is actually capable of playing GTA 5 at 1080p, which you can't say for Intel's 8th gen parts. On the lowest quality DirectX 11 preset, the game is comfortably playable with mid-40s frame rates. And the best thing is, it's smooth too, so when you're flogging around corners in a fast car or even zooming across the landscape in a helicopter or jet, there's basically no stuttering and only the occasional brief data streaming slowdown when you're flying in a fast vehicle. While GTA 5 isn't the newest game and it was built with last gen consoles in mind, it's still surprising how well this game scales down to relatively weak integrated graphics. It's not as good news for the other older title I tested, The Witcher 3. This game definitely does not scale well because with the lowest possible in-game settings and even just a 720p resolution, it's completely unplayable. Jogging around Novigrad and frame rates were in the low 20s, and it doesn't get much better outside the major cities. To make matters worse for The Witcher 3 on integrated graphics, the game looks absolutely atrocious at such low quality settings. It actually is quite surprising the game doesn't run better considering how bad it looks. But clearly the engine has been designed for high performance systems, as it's far from a poorly optimized game on true gaming machines. There is a chance the game might be at least a little bit playable on a Ryzen 7 2700U system, although I guess you will probably still have to put up with the terrible visuals. A couple of other games I tested were far from playable as well, and none of these should be a big surprise. Assassin's Creed Origins is one of the best looking games of 2017, but even on the lowest quality settings with a 50% resolution scale, which brings the actual rendered resolution down to just 540p, the Ryzen 5 2500U falls well short of providing 30 FPS in the game's benchmark. Judging by what I've seen, some areas of the game are more intensive than the inbuilt benchmark, so there's really no hope for playing this very recent release on Ryzen Mobile. Another Ubisoft title, Watch Dogs 2, is slightly more playable in the sense that you can run it at 720p, not 540p, but it's not a great experience. In general, on the lowest preset, the game runs below 30 FPS, but it's the major stuttering that makes this game unplayable. This game is well known to use a lot of CPU resources in addition to the GPU, and all up, it's too much for the Ryzen 5 2500U. The final unplayable game I tested is another recent release, Middle-earth: Shadow of War. This game isn't the best from a gameplay perspective, but it flat out does not run well on the Ryzen 5 2500U, though that shouldn't come as a surprise from a 27 release with decent visuals. On the lowest preset and just a 720p resolution, the game fails to reach 30 FPS in the benchmark and runs like crap in the actual game, so give this one a miss, I reckon. It's better news for Rise of the Tomb Raider. This game looks fantastic on high-end systems, but it does have the ability to scale down to perform well enough on the Ryzen 5 2500U. When set to a 720p resolution and the lowest possible quality settings, the game does sit above 30 FPS even in the intensive geothermal valley area. The game looks dreadful at this level of detail, so it's probably not the best way to play, as much of this game is enjoying the beautiful visuals, but I guess you can play it on an ultra portable with Ryzen Mobile inside if you really want to. A game you might genuinely want to play on Ryzen Mobile is Prey. While this game was released in 2017 and uses the demanding CryEngine, it runs reasonably well on the low preset with the resolution set to 900p. When I say reasonably well, I do mean just above 30 FPS with a rare dip just below in intensive situations. But with a game like Prey, around 30 FPS is playable, and of course you can lock the game to that frame rate for a console-like experience. It's not surprising Prey runs well on the Ryzen 5 2500U either. This is one of the better optimized games for AMD GPU hardware, and it runs really well on powerful systems as it's not the most graphically demanding modern release. The lowest preset clearly cuts out enough detail that it scales down nicely to integrated graphics, and with a slight reduction in resolution, the game is playable with some roughness around the edges. The biggest surprise in this entire video will be Star Wars Battlefront 2. In between designing and implementing a complicated loot box system designed to wring buys out of every last cent and writing a disappointing single-player campaign, EA and DICE did manage to optimize the Frostbite engine to a point where this game runs superbly on low-end hardware. Even though this game was released just a few months ago with great visuals on high-end systems, Battlefront 2 is comfortably playable on the Ryzen 5 2500U. Set everything to the lowest possible settings and use a 75% resolution scale at 1080p, so we're rendering once again at 810p, and you don't just sit above 30 FPS, but you most often hover in the 40 to 50 FPS bracket. Now this isn't the ultimate Battlefront 2 experience, as ideally you'd want to be running at 60 FPS and at a native 1080p. But the game doesn't look too bad in upscaled 810p, it certainly doesn't lose enough detail to become unplayable, and the frame rate is high enough to still be able to slaughter foes in Galactic Assault multiplayer. The final game I'll be talking about here is Civilization 6, because this is a perfect game to play on the go. As I mentioned in my initial review of the Ryzen 5 2500U, this is the first 15-watt laptop chip I've used that provides a playable experience in Civilization 6. Set to the lowest quality settings at 1080p, you'll get at least 35 FPS in the most intensive situations, but more like 50 FPS throughout most of the game. As a game that doesn't really need a high frame rate to be playable, you can even crank up the quality settings a little bit and sit around that 30 FPS mark with a few nicer effects. The end result here is surprisingly good news for the Ryzen 5 2500U. Of the 9 graphically intensive modern AAA games I looked at, only 4 games were flat out unplayable with a Vega 8 GPU. And on the other hand, games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 and GTA 5 are surprisingly playable at decent enough quality settings, while Civilization 6's performance makes it a great option for portable gaming. This is in stark contrast to Intel's basic integrated graphics, which was unable to play any modern game and even crashed in a couple of titles, at least when I looked at their 7th gen CPUs in mid-2017, and to be honest, it's a similar story with the 8th gen line too, as Intel didn't really upgrade the GPU in any meaningful way. It's quite clear at this point, if it wasn't already, that Ryzen Mobile has a massive GPU performance lead this generation. Across this video and part 1, you can clearly see what this means for ultra-portable laptops. Games that weren't previously playable become playable, which is great news for those that want to play a few rounds in titles like Fortnite, Civilization 6 or Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the go. It should be an even better story with the Ryzen 7 2700U. So once I get my hands on a laptop with the 2700U inside, I'll revisit this collection of games to see if we can increase the quality levels a little bit. But it is tough to source any laptops with Ryzen inside as they are a rare breed right now, but the quality of the APU compared to AMD's previous offerings will hopefully lead to more Ryzen laptops in the coming months. If you are interested in buying one of the few Ryzen laptops on the market right now, we have some Amazon links to those in the description below, but otherwise, that's it for now, and I'll catch you next time.